All right, welcome everybody to the very first in our communication series. If you have been sitting around, you have heard Christinia and Sabrina. Trish is probably there, but she's quiet. This communication series has been a collaboration between the Ontario Rett Syndrome Association and the associations in BC, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba and Alberta. Did I say them all? All of us together have put together this series, and we really hope you enjoy it. My name is Lindsay. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Rett Syndrome Association. And today I'm really delighted to introduce you to two Saskatchewan speech and language pathologists. We have two today, and the first is Jenn Markosky. She attended Minot State University and has been an SLP for over 20 years. She does not look that old, but aside, she worked for nonprofit organizations as well as healthcare and recently moved into full-time private practice. She specializes in promoting communication for children and adults with complex communication needs. She enjoys coaching and supporting families and teams who use AAC. Julia Drabble has been a SLP for over 20 years. Again, where does the time go? You don't look that old, but she holds a bachelor and master degrees in speech language pathology from Minot State University and has worked in health, education, and the private sector. For the past 18 years, Julia has been employed as a school SLP working with children from preschool through adulthood. Julia is particularly interested in the area of augmentative and alternative communication, AAC, and believes every person should have an opportunity to find their voice. We are so excited to have you join us today and share your knowledge. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to write them in the chat, and Jen and Julia can look at them at the end of their presentation and answer some questions. If that's not for you, if you'd rather ask, we can just wait until the end, and Jen and Julia will open it up for questions. So without further ado, Julia and Jen.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Lindsay. We are giving this presentation today from the beautiful city of Saskatoon in Saskatchewan on Treaty 6 territory and the unceded traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. It is so good to be here today to speak with you. We're really excited, so we will get started. So as Lindsay mentioned, we've been doing this for over 20 years, and it's really hard for us to believe, actually, when we say that we've been doing this for over 20 years. I don't know where the time does go, but when Jen and I were in university many years ago, AAC looked a lot different than it does now. So back then, basically what it was you want to start small, offer very minimal choices, maybe between 2 to 3 choices, and build vocabulary as the individual becomes proficient with the original vocabulary that you gave them. And the vocabulary often was based on requesting items. So things like toys or food, drink, snacks, those kinds of things. But now, more recently, people have looked at the functions of communication. And they've also applied that knowledge to AAC users as well. And guess what? One of the main reasons that humans communicate is not to request items, it's to comment socially on things around them. And so we really need to be cognizant of giving AAC users the vocabulary that they need to be social with people instead of just requesting. And so how do we do that? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit before we go into PODD. So we want to provide our AAC users with a robust vocabulary and then model and model and model some more. So why do we want to provide that robust vocabulary? Well, think about how we communicate with children from the time that they're born. We constantly talk to them, we sing to them, we gesture to them. We expose kids to thousands of words and language experiences before they even turn a year old and they say their first word. So when I'm talking about robust vocabulary, that just means words of all kinds, not only nouns or the things that we think our kids might want to request. Think about the things that we do with little ones. We play peekaboo. We describe things that are happening. Look at the kitty. Look at the dog. Kitty is playing. Those aren't anything to do with requests. We comment on things. Oh, that's a silly kitty, or oh, funny daddy. We provide all of this really good input, those language experiences for kids before we ever expect those communication attempts from a baby. Okay, so that same idea holds true for individuals who are learning AAC. They need to be exposed to their vocabulary over and over and over again in order to learn how to communicate using that system. So this is a sentence that I hear way too many times in schools that I support. People are always saying there's too much vocabulary on the page. There's too many buttons. It's just too much for them. But in reality, I really think it feels like it's too much for us because we already have that efficient way of communicating with people around us. And we have to learn this new vocabulary system right alongside our AAC user. So it's kind of that old adage of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Giving a child all the vocabulary, people think that's too much at once, but we are going to choose to focus on small bites at a time. And you'll see that we can build vocabulary really well that way. Jen.
Jen, you're muted.
Seamless, like professionals that we are. Okay, so what is PODD? Okay, so that was the thing that people wanted to talk about today. And as you'll find out, Julie and I are going to probably go a little bit off track in some regards because although I'm a huge fan of PODD, I think what I like most about PODD is the language layout, is the really emphasis on modeling language. So even if your child isn't using this system, you or the user that you work with isn't using this system, you can take these principles for any system that you're using. So that's probably why I know I like it the most, and I think Julia would probably agree with that. So we're going to kind of go over the what is it, how do you find it, how do you get one, and then when would you use it? That's basically what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. PODD stands for Pragmatic Organization Dynamic Display. So essentially the pragmatic part, when we talk about pragmatics, that's sort of the social construct of language. So the idea of PODD is if your child says apple, they will have gone through some other steps to tell you so that you'll know, are they asking about an apple? Are they telling you a story about an apple? Are they commenting, this apple's delicious? Or are they saying, I want some more apple, right? So you're going to get the context of what they want to tell you about. The other really key thing about PODD is that it's meant to be autonomous. So, and what that means is it's not necessarily independent. So, whereas some devices, the paper-based one isn't necessarily completely independent, it relies on a smart communication partner. Whereas a electronic device could be a bit more independent where the child could start it. But autonomy is just as important. The child chooses the message. Out of all the vocabulary available, they can choose the message. The difference being, how Julia talked about sort of in the olden days, we would just give, apple, banana, milk. Well, those are the three things you can talk about, kid. So not really autonomous. It's not a really robust thing to talk about. Whereas when we provide a pod with all this vocabulary, they can then really have some ownership about what they want to talk about. When we talk about smart partner, that's us, that's the humans. Smart partner is lovely for kids who don't have a ton of really strong coordination, either physically or with eye gaze. Smart partner can be really great because then we can interpret, and we are smart because we know the child well, we have a lot of experience with that individual, um, so we are able to sort of infer, oh, I know probably what you meant to say, right? You hit 4 buttons, but I know based on my knowledge of you and the context of the situation, the button that you meant to hit was this one. So I'm gonna check in. Did you mean this one? And they're gonna say yes, right? So a little bit smarter. Whereas if you hit a tablet, you might hit any number of buttons and become frustrated. Now, originally it was meant to be a paper-based system. It is now available on several digital platforms, and we're going to talk about that as well, and can be used with eye gaze. So how do you get a book? Essentially, the books are, what you do is you buy a DVD box set. Looks like this, right? And then you hope you still have a laptop that can play them. There are some digital copies as well, but this is an example of what you would buy. There's 3 different CDs in here, and then you basically print it. It's essentially, if anybody's familiar with Boardmaker, it's essentially just a collection of Boardmaker slides that then you can customize as you wish and choose kind of based on your child. Now, you're going to want to choose the layout based on careful consideration. We recommend with a AAC professional speech path that knows you and your child really well. That's how you're going to choose the appropriate layout. Now, like I said, there's some digital pieces now. We're really seeing that that's a preference for a lot of people. So the 3 kind of main ones are Assistiveware has a SimPod. That's a nice one because you can also print it to create a book. So for example, if you don't have a way to use these CDs anymore on your laptop, then you can get this one, and then you could print a paper-based book but also have it on a tablet. And then there's also Tobii Dynavox. Those are the people that own Boardmaker now, if anybody's familiar with sort of the standard picture communication symbols your child probably used at some point in their life. And they all range in prices, and I don't think any are a subscription. I forgot to check that, but that would be a one-time purchase for most of them, I think. SimPod, I have a feeling might be a subscription. I'd have to look into that. Navigation is so important, and again, navigation is going to be important, digital, but also any device or system you end up using with your AAC user. The navigation is the really, really important part. PODD is set up really nicely in categories. Again, like I said, that's going to give you that context of your message. When we talk about navigation, we have to teach it, because I think it's really fair to say, without any disrespect to any of your AAC users, you are probably a better reader than they are. You probably have a better experience with categories and those types of connections. So you have to teach that. You're teaching that skill. So you're always going to navigate out loud as much as possible. So here's an example of how you would navigate. So here's one type of PODD. It's a paper-based. We would call this one a 20 because it's 5 by 4. That's the extent of my speech path math right there. Kind of like a digital thing, whenever there's a number in the corner, that means you're going to go to another button. So this is my first page of the book. I would teach my partner to wave their hand or do whatever signal works for them, and that signals to me bring the pod, Jen, I've got something to say to you. So I'd say, oh, I have something to say. And then I would touch this red more to say. Now at the bottom here, when you make these pods, you would cut all these bottom tabs off and you would be able to then have a layer of tabs. So you would see a 2. So I'd flip to the 2. I'm going to show you a video of this as well. So I'd flip to the 2. So here I am on page 2. And then I want to say something. So I'd say, I think it's, I'm saying this all out loud and pointing. Even if your child is doing eye gaze, you're going to point to where they're going to help draw their attention to where you're navigating. So I say, oh, I think it's, and now I have to go to page 4, right? So I got this, I have this little number. PODD is brilliant. There is, the numbers are color coded. As you move through different pods, they are always the same color. The numbers might change. So for example, Julia, this will make Julia laugh, but I love me a 10. I love me a 10B, but it's not 10B in every book, but it's always pink. So really it's fastest if I just look for the pink page, or in this case, I'm gonna look for the blue tab real quick. So see how it's blue. And then I can say, oh, I think this is great. Everybody that came today is so awesome. Oh, I am having such a fun time. So I'm going to model those 2 words. I'm using full sentences, but I'm pointing to the pictures that I'm using. Okay, so that would be a paper-based system. Moving to a digital one, I believe this is what the Toby layout looks like. Again, same kind of idea. I'm going to go to, I don't like this. I don't know why I decided to go negative here. That's really setting the vibe. But I would pick my button here. So this can be eye gaze. But again, if I'm modeling for the user, I'm still going to point. I'm going to touch that button, navigate to it. And then I can be like, ah, I think this is so silly. It's silly that I picked the negative page. That was not a good idea. Okay, I can go back to oops. That's one thing I should talk about. These side panels then are always the same. So this is if I made a mistake, I would say oops, or I want to turn the page. Categories is a great way to kind of quickly get to a whole bunch of options. So these are kind of like your home panel on a device or on your cell phone, if you think about that your home screen on your cell phone or your smartphone. So I'm just going to show you, this is in your handout so you can watch the whole videos, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of some of them. So PODD has, this is partner assisted scanning. So if you have a child whose vision isn't strong, motorically not able to touch, but you want to use a low tech device, you can do a partner assisted scan. And so it's really hard to talk about. So I'm just going to kind of show you a short video of this. This is all from a YouTube channel called We Speak PODD. And this particular family has tons of videos, tons of resources. They do lots of speaking engagements. I think they're just a really great resource, again, just for the AAC knowledge. You don't have to use this system, but again, they just do such a nice job of modeling. And the other thing I want you to really look at is how long she waits. So this is the mom. In this first video, it's just her. Hopefully I don't have a commercial. Sorry. Thanks, Grammarly. Oops, sorry, guys. Okay, there. Oh, you can't hear the sound. Okay, thank you. Whoever told me that. Thank you for that. Okay. New share. Okay.
Words plus a more to say. In partner assisted scanning, our chat words are moved to the second page with a turn the page option. So basically they're just switched around, and that's for user access so that the individual who is waiting for the scan can get right to their pragmatic branches with the option of quick chat first. So if I had something to say, or if Angela had something to say, she would raise her hand. I would say, oh, your hand is raised, you have something to say. And I would begin scanning. I scan each column one at a time. Quick chat, something's wrong, I think it's. If she says yes, then I scan each one individually. Quick chat, something's wrong, I think it's. Yes, she says yes to I think it's. The number 4 tells me what page I need to go to. Number 4, think. At this point, I would then scan the page.
So this one, notice the colors are really different. This is a high contrast set of colors. So this would be meant for somebody with low vision, again, needing that auditory scanning. So requires a lot of memory, a lot of listening, but I just kind of wanted to give you that idea of what the auditory scanning can look like. And then, whoop. Okay, there's my dog. I need you guys to see this. Hey, Julia, what did I do? Talk amongst yourselves. Chickpea is neither a chick nor a pea. Okay. Ta-da! There, we're back. Okay. And then this next one is really interesting. So there's another video, super long, so I'm not going to show the whole thing. Again, you can go and watch it. But this is one where the child brought up a conversation. Bit of a sad topic, but still really nice. You're going to have to watch the Grammarly ad again. I'm sorry.
Quick chat, something's wrong, I think it's. I want, let's go do something. I want, let's go. Yes, let's go.
So I don't know if you can see, but so Angela's giving a subtle nod. Mom is a smart partner. She knows this about Angela, that this is Angela's yes.
Not go visit. Home, somewhere in the house or yard, in the car. School, somewhere at school, shopping. Outside, inside, turn the page. Uh-oh. Yes, outside. Outside. Can you put your hand back? I reach. I reach. I open. Good job. I grab. Come on. Let me fix your finger. There you go. Not go. See, look, watch. Patio, yard, garage. The garden, the mailbox, fence. The grill, trash can, turn the page. Yes, the grill. Yeah.
So see how subtle it is, right? When Angela's communicating. But Mom is smart partner, so she's recognizing those subtle movements. So it can be as sort of simple as that. Importance of navigation. So just kind of in summary of all of that navigation piece, I think the thing you want to really think about is that you're teaching it. Basically, you're teaching a new language. You heard Julia talk about how we model language for kids, for speaking kids so much. We want to do the same thing for our AAC users. So we want to know that they probably don't have the same experience with categories, with patterns, those types of things. They don't have as much language, so we have to teach it. So you really want to talk out loud as you navigate. You want to teach the user how to find the word, because that's the part with PODD is they have to, and really I would say probably any of those systems, you're teaching them how to navigate, how to find it, how to locate the item. So you're going to do that with really any system. It doesn't have to be PODD, because any system, they have to know how to find everything, right? As soon as it's not all on one page, as soon as we go past apple, juice, banana, then we have to have a really robust system and teach them that pattern and keep that pattern the same. And with that, one more thing, Julia, sorry, I'm on a roll. With that, what I always challenge people is when you get a system, whatever you end up choosing, don't change it at first. Don't muck it up. Get in there, get to know it, spend about at least I'd love it if you spend a month with it. Because I always say somebody far smarter than you or I figured out where everything should go. So let's just give it a chance, because probably the language is in there. And then as we go, we can change things. But things that make sense for you may not make sense for your user or for other users. And that's especially true, I would say, for the school team. I really tell the school team, don't change it. Don't mess it up. I would prefer if the family changed it to the way that they feel makes the most sense to them, because they're really the people that are going to use it the longest. So that's kind of my rant on that. And I will stop the share.
Okay. There we go.
I know that was the one small flaw.
All right. So we're talking a little bit about modeling, because like Jen talked about too, it's a really important part of teaching vocabulary to your AAC user. Not only teaching vocabulary, but also it's an important part of learning the system yourself. So we all learn by watching others and by experience, and the those videos were magical. I love them because until you actually see somebody using PODD, it can be difficult to understand how it can be used. Our AAC users are no different. They need to be able to watch and learn by experience too. And so by modeling, by modeling, you also show the value of communication and messages. Mistakes are okay. I find sometimes when I'm working with school teams, they're hesitant to kind of dip their toe, take that first step into AAC with whether it's high tech or low tech, because it's something new. And so if you're scared of making a mistake, don't be, because we need to be able to show the AAC user that it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we all learn. So we're not endorsed by Nike, but we really like the slogan, just do it. Because if you just try something, it will be, you'll learn either way. It'll be successful or it might be a mistake, but that's okay. Jen, I don't know if you want to talk about this one, but word of the week was something that we kind of came up with. It's just a fun way to make AAC manageable for you and your user, as well as anybody else on your team, right? Just pick a word and make it your focus for the week. Did you want to say anything else about that one, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. But I find when I challenge people to do that, it's almost like reverse psychology, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, well, I can do 2 words, Jen.
Yeah.
But really it makes it a lot easier, right? And then the thing that Julie and I really want you to understand is, if you pick these high frequency words, they'll come up a lot in the day. If you pick open or go or fun or great. Like that'll happen a lot in the day versus pterodactyl. Unless you're my one client Mason, that doesn't come up a whole lot in the day. So we want to pick those high frequency words, and then we can use them all day long. And then it's so much easier. It takes that pressure off you because you can find that word really fast. Because the biggest part is just getting used to, like Julia said, just doing it, like just getting there. So make it easy and you're great in a day. Love it. Or pterodactyl.
Or pterodactyl. We can use pterodactyl in a little bit, actually. So we said at the outset that we were going to talk about literacy and PODD. So this is where the literacy piece comes in. And when Jen and I were putting this together, we kind of had like this almost brain explosion thinking about what does literacy actually mean? And typically, you know, kind of the base definition of literacy would be the ability to read and write. But we also want to think about literacy in terms of being literate with the AAC device that you choose, whether it's high tech or low tech. Because literacy also means having competency in a knowledge or in competency or knowledge in an area. So we want those AAC users and ourselves, obviously, to be literate in the reading and writing sense, but we also want them to be literate in terms of being competent users of their AAC system. So how can we go about this? Well, books are a great way to teach navigation and new vocabulary, whether you're an AAC user or not, right? We read books to our kids from the time that they're babies and sometimes even before they're born. And you can use this idea with, again, high-tech or low-tech AAC. So today I chose Jen's 10B page that she talks about a lot. And I just decided, you know what, today we're going to teach prepositions. Okay, so 10B is an actions page. You can see at the bottom there it says actions. It has vocabulary about prepositions. It has words like open and close and lots of other things in there. So today, for today's purposes, I've decided that we're going to teach the word found, turn the page, and some of the prepositions. So I just wrote a very simple book in a Word document and inserted pictures of a little toy bear that I had in my office to talk about a bear. Okay. You could easily make this on a Google slide too. It wouldn't have to be on a Word document. Okay, so, oops. So where's bear? I found bear in the toy box. So we're going to go, can you see my cursor? Yes, okay, good. So where's bear? I found bear in. Now, where's in? Oh, in is way up in the top corner. I found bear in the toy box. I wonder where else bear is going to be. How about we turn the page? How are we going to say turn the page? Oh, I see turn the page way down here at the bottom. Okay, so again, just modeling and talking out loud as you navigate. Okay, so where could bear be next? Where's bear? I found bear on is way up here in the corner this time, on the bridge. Oh, that's such a silly bear. Bear is on the bridge. Remember, we need to turn the page in order to find out where bear's going to go next. Turn the page is down in the corner. We're going to turn the page. Where's bear? I found bear under. Now, where can I find under? Oh, it's right over here. I found bear under the chair, and so on. That was just a very little demonstration of what you can do with with a book. And the cool thing about it is, just like Jen was talking about pterodactyls, use that to your advantage. Maybe your AAC user is really into pterodactyls, so write a book about a pterodactyl. You don't have to draw pictures. You don't even have to take pictures. You can use pictures off of Google. Google Images is beautiful. You can use, you know, if your AAC user is interested in Paw Patrol or a certain movie character, Iron Man is really popular, I find sometimes. Use those interests because that will keep your AAC user motivated.
I think I even saw something in the chat.
Oh, good.
Lindsay, I just summarized the questions that came through the chat just
Oh,
now.
wonderful. Okay. So the one says, how much time would you recommend when you first start? And now, Renee, I think Renee asked this one. Do you mean like how much time would you recommend when you first start before you expect them to use it? Is that kind of what you're thinking of? Or
Yes.
okay, so the going I don't know what the consensus or the theory of the train of thought right now is that honestly you'll model for a whole year before you even sweat if they're using it or not. And that sounds like a year. But if you think about you know, when babies are small, we talk to that baby for a whole stinking year, right? Before we even expect a word from them. We model so much language. We give them so much experience. We teach them this way of talking. So for an AAC user, we need to mirror that as much as possible. So we need to give them this huge, robust experience as much as possible before we really, really have any anticipation that they're going to start to use it. So it is a long, slow process. Now, having said that, I really have only had one client that took more than a year. Most of my clients, I would say the vast majority, start to use it almost right away, within a very short time. But I give myself a year in my head so that I know I'm just modeling it as much as I can, using that time to help myself get comfortable with it. And like I said, the one child, oh man, I wanted to give up so many times. And that mom was like, no, we are not giving up, Jen. Like that mom was a champion and she just kept pushing and now the child does use it. But in her case, her little wriggly jiggly body just wasn't, it just took her a long time to be able to navigate and understand it. But so yeah, short version, as long as it takes, long time. Julia, any?
No, that's a great answer. That's for sure.
I would say, oh, sorry, Julia, I'm bossing around here. Do you want to do number 2?
That's okay. Would you do anything different for people that have teen or adult children? And I would say vastly, probably not, unless you have a teen or an adult who already has some vocabulary. They might be able to learn a system a little bit faster because they already have some vocabulary in place. But otherwise, you wouldn't, the process is the same. You're still having to model where those vocabulary words are in PODD or in any device.
You know, obviously you're going to pick topics that are more interesting to them.
Yeah.
But, and I think, I don't know that we talked about this today, Julia, but that presumed competence.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, you want to assume like that your adult or your teen communication user, AAC user, that they're going to, that they can do this, right? They are capable. We just have to teach it. We just have to keep going and keep teaching it. And they are capable of telling us things and communicating with us because already they communicate in a variety of ways. It's just a little bit more idiosyncratic than we probably would like. We want them to have something a bit more universal.
That's really common in the Rett world is we as parents of people with Rett syndrome do always assume competence. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Good. Yay. We were talking to the right people. Because that I think is the biggest barrier, and I know Julia talked about this at school sometimes, that we find is they're like, oh, there's too many words, and I feel like saying, lady, there's too many words for you. Like,
Yeah.
there's not too many words for this person that needs to talk. So, the barrier is often the adults and the other supporting adults, not the adult user. So any hope for adults 39 years old with Rett syndrome? Yeah, there's always hope, for sure.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe a 39-year-old with Rett syndrome has some pretty solid patterns and communication style that's really working for them. Might be a little bit, maybe they're a bit more, I don't know, more stubborn, or they've got a way that works for them. They might not be as open to it, but I still think if you find the topic they want to talk about, it's worth it. Communication is always a good idea.
Absolutely.
Oh, presuming potential. Okay, thank you, Joanne. So Joanne said if you want to look into this topic further, I would suggest looking into the term presuming potential by Kate Ahern. Okay. Like that. Such a big book, or should we just start with a small selection? So yeah, you start with the whole book because we want to give this whole thing, but again, you're doing that 1 word a week, so it doesn't matter. You're just carrying around a bigger book.
Yeah.
But and then you can make a nice strap, so it's an attractive crossbody bag. It's a neutral, goes with every outfit. But no, the idea is you have that whole resource at your fingertips. There are different levels of books. Like there's books that have like 70 pictures per page. I showed you a 20. I think you can go as low as 9. But you'll find the 9 is painful. Right, Julia? Like, I don't know if you've used the 9 a whole bunch, but
I haven't, no, but I would assume that it would just make it thicker, right?
it's thicker, and it's there's no words that you want to say in there.
Yeah.
So you're just like, how do I say this? Whereas at least with the 20 or the 25 or the 40, there's more words that you can start to work on, and it's a lot easier to navigate, actually, the more words you have.
I have a question. Do you recommend, who is PODD for? Would you recommend going straight to PODD, or if you had the ability to go straight to a computer device? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we talked about this, didn't we, Julia? Like, PODD was originally designed for kids with cerebral palsy that don't have a lot of super great fine motor, like often, they're quite high tone, and hence the need for the smart partner. I think now that PODD's available with eye gaze, it's better, but I'm not sure that it would be my favorite thing for girls with or individuals with Rett's. I don't know, Julia, what do you think? Like
The paper based, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, just because if you have anybody who has difficulty, with using their hands, that will be very difficult to navigate, and it might be quite taxing on their motor system. So being able to incorporate it electronically through an eye gaze device would probably be more desirable in that case.
And that's sort of why we really emphasized, like, this information would work for any system. So because there are some other systems that where the eye gaze might be a little bit more user friendly and those kinds of things. And so that's why you'd want to really talk about that with your professional, like with your team. But having said that, my philosophy has always been whatever you pick will work as long as you use it. So whatever system makes the most sense to you personally, as a family, as a team, we can make that work. We can teach it to your child, because like I said, often it's us, the grown-ups, that are the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, and you saying, it can take up to a year. The way you say that makes total sense, but if I hadn't heard you say that, I don't think I would give it that long, you know? I'd give it a couple weeks and be like, well, this isn't working.
This is
So
dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's good to know. And, you know, we have some girls who can't use the eye gaze because they might be too wobbly. So, but they do have some gross motor skills where they could maybe bat, maybe not, you know, point perfectly, but they could maybe use their hands a little bit more. If it were a bigger book, that would even be more helpful.
And that's
Somebody,
where that, oh, sorry.
nope,
Go ahead.
follow, you can fin.
Well, and that's where
It's
sort of
fun.
that smart partner comes in for sure. And I know like you can use that high contrast. I've made it where the backgrounds, like that one gal that took 4 years, we were worried about vision, so I made all the backgrounds of the pages black, so it was a bit more of a contrast for her that way. And so yeah, if she would touch a certain area, then we would try to interpret, much the way a child might babble and say baba, and we say, oh, you want your bottle, you know, we would interpret that way. But yeah, I think it's really important to know, like, it will take a long time and you have to live it. Like, it's a lifestyle. You have to live it at home and at school as much as possible. Julie and I were talking with somebody, you know, saying like, well, she's really, you know, our daughter, we understand her at home. We know what she wants. So she doesn't want to use the device at home or use the mode at home. And that's fine. But I would encourage you for you to use it, and your child can communicate however they want with you at home. Because especially like the person with the 39-year-old, you probably have a great system in place, right? Like I'm always so amazed at how parents, it's like some kind of, it's like they got the ESPN in there. Like they just can, you know, you can just read what your child is saying. But that's a chance, you know, you can interpret what they're saying, but then you could model it back with the system so that they're still learning the navigation, so that when they need it, if they go to respite, if they go to work, if they go to day program, wherever they go, they have it when they need it. So you use it and then they can communicate however they want to you.
Yeah. And you're still providing that really good input then with by modeling all of the vocabulary, you're giving that receptive piece of vocabulary a go. So that's really good. I noticed this question about our SLP at our school only wants us to have 2 words per page and says she's not ready for more. Well,
Give her our number. No.
without stepping on a lot of toes.
It's good that Julia answered this.
Yes, I am a school SLP. Based on what we presented today, I would say provide the robust vocabulary and only focus on, maybe she's only going to focus on those 2 words per page for a while, but those can be the words that you focus on to model, but still provide the rest of the vocabulary on the page. Maybe the 2 words that particular SLP picked, like Jen had said before, maybe she doesn't want to talk about those things. So we're always ready for more. It's the adults in the room who are sometimes the barrier. Is this tool available in Canada? Jen, that's in the presentation about where it can be purchased.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I think so this one, this thing I bought, like this is out of Australia, but it's like the lady who created this, but you can just buy it off those websites. So this piece, and I think it runs about $300.
What's the name of it?
So this is the PODD, like, so these are like the CDs. So this is the actual book. So
to be able to print off the pages.
Yeah. So in the olden days, before it was on the internet, like before it was on digital, you would just have to buy this and you'd have to print your own book. So like in those videos, that's what that mom did. She bought this set of CDs, put them in your computer. You also need to have Boardmaker. So it's kind of complicated. So it's better if you have a speech path that already bought this and helps you make one. But again, that SimPod brand I talked about, that's available on your tablet, and then you can also print pages so that you could have a paper-based. Paper-based is so lovely because it's a way better swimmer. That's what I always say. Like,
Yes.
right? You can go in the bathtub, it can go to the beach.
Yeah. High tech is not always where it's at. That's for
No.
sure.
Yeah.
And
So
sometimes what happens if the high tech device just happens to quit, right? You need a backup plan anyways. Yeah.
So like I work with a guy, and he uses a pretty complicated communication system, but in his backpack behind his chair, he's got an alphabet board. So if this big device breaks down, he can point back there and we can whip out the alphabet board and he can quickly, right? You always have to have a plan B for sure. Daughter.
We can definitely make sure everybody gets the handouts or the slideshow. We'll make sure that that happens for sure.
And then I'm seeing a note here from Leah about her daughter. Where could I start? Do you have access to any kind of speech pathology in your area, or would your group home have access to anybody? Do you see this question? So the question says, my daughter's 41. She lives in a group home and has not had speech pathology for years. She's relatively high functioning. Yes. So, ideally, perfect world, if you had a unicorn, you'd find a speech path with AAC background, and get a consult from her. You don't necessarily need like ongoing therapy or treatment. Often we find just even a pep talk once in a while from that speech path to your team. Because really the people that need the training is the group home people. Your daughter
Yes.
probably doesn't. It's
Nope.
probably the group home people. Oh yeah, isolation. Yeah. So there's been a teacher that comes in every day. They've been under set of 6 years and doesn't seem to want to use it anymore. Any suggestions? Just outside of Toronto. Okay, so yeah, Leah, I would say if you can find a SLP like by Toronto, surely you should have pick of the litter. And you can do virtual too. They don't have to, don't underestimate the power of that. Having Julie and I have quite a bit of experience with that.
There should be a list on the Ontario SLP website. I can't remember right now what it's called, but of a list of private practitioners. And I know in Saskatchewan, we have a list on our association's website for the Saskatchewan SLPs. And they also have a section about like the areas that that they kind of specialize or that they're interested in. So if you look for that, that would probably be your best bet. Yeah. So somebody with some knowledge of computer, like AAC devices, would be really beneficial probably.
Yeah, especially if you're paying out of pocket. Don't get somebody who doesn't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
So Juliet, Nicholas said his daughter is at a Toby for 6 years and doesn't seem to want to use it. Again, I would say the big thing too is remember, we didn't really talk about this, but you want to create a conversation when you're doing AAC. You don't want to be like, what is it? Tell me, push the button, blah, blah, right? Like we don't want that. We want a conversation. So even if just you're using it and talking to her and she's communicating back however she communicates, but you interpret using it, that's a much more positive model than
saying, show me the dog or show me apple. Yeah.
Or do you want more soup or more food or whatever? Like, I think that's sometimes the default for people is to put it around meal times, where the kid can ask for more food. Like, who wants to talk about that all through dinner? I'd rather talk about like, this food is disgusting. Like that might be more fun, right? So Or maybe
Yep.
it's just at my house that people say that, but make a conversation. Be a good conversation partner. Oh, Lindsay, you're muted.
No,
My lip
thank
reading
you.
isn't very good. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I think probably everybody posted them. Well, thank you so much, Julia and Jen, for doing this today. I think, again, it's a great message, and it's very inspiring to hear that you can do things that are, I mean, this does seem kind of difficult, but it is relatively simple. And like you said, if you could hire an SLP if you don't have one at your school to make you a PODD book. There's a lot of resources online. You could just have a few little tutoring sessions with an SLP like yourselves or other people, and start from there. So that's great. I would also really like to thank Christinia, Michaela, Trish, and Sabrina. These are the association presidents of British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario. They have done a tremendous job putting together this entire web series. I also encourage you to pay attention to the next webinars we have coming up. We have a number throughout the next month and a half, so stay tuned with your local association. ORSA has been really great at setting up these Eventbrite. So yes, stay tuned. There's going to be lots more discussion about AAC. So thank you everybody for joining. Once again, we will be emailing out the presentation if you didn't get it all. Yeah, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.